Yes. Welcome back to another episode of Friends from Work. Robbie and I have a very finite amount of time that we can record today's episode. And so I want to get right into it. Typically we have, 7 to 10 minutes of banter. And because of that, I'm skipping it today. But that way we're not skipping any of the good content right now. Okay. So I'm ready to dive right back in. Today is an episode that I love. We started this tradition in 2022, and we're going to be giving 3 bold predictions for the MCU in 2025, and then an honorable mention of something we would just like to see or something we're craving, something we're missing going forward. And Robbie, before we give any kind of predictions for 2025, I just want to say I have receipts from our last year bold predictions episode. I went back through, which is really fun. And I think the reason this episode becomes one of my favorite episodes of the year is because of the discussion it leads to. Like every time we give a bold prediction, I went back and listened. It was so fun to just hear us break down all these theories and where we were at. And then to look back on that is extra fun. So how are you today? How was your legal work today? And are you ready to get going?
I am ready to get going. I am excited to shut off I would say shut off the legal part of my brain, but we're only like 2 months out from those worlds colliding again for the first time since She-Hulk. So, but I am still happy to be. This is a fun thing. I've had these thoughts kind of bumping around in the old noggin for a couple months now. There are so many announcements that have come between the last time we did this and now. Like I'm trying to think. January 2024.
Yep.
We really didn't know what the future would hold in terms of like the Avengers movies. I think things were still kind of in flux post Jonathan Majors.
I just got to quickly add that right before we started, you texted me, just trying to wrap negotiations with opposing counsel and then can hop on. I'll keep you posted. And I wondered, was that the most badass text I've ever received in my life? And so that's the context of today. Yeah. Dude, okay, so I went back and listened to our bold predictions last year, and I think you're right. In fact, we had a few bold predictions about the Fantastic Four film, which is actually next year. And so I wonder if at the time we didn't have a date for that yet and kind of that was ambiguous. Yeah. We, in the episode, talk about 2 things that I found funny. One, we talk about the cast of that movie, like Ebon Moss-Bachrach.
Did we have a cast at that point?
We must have, just because I think it was right around Valentine's Day, wasn't it, of last year?
Oh, remember right. That's right.
So it's right around then that we were talking about it. And
wow.
I guess Ebon maybe had been rumored right before that Valentine's official announcement, maybe. So we were kind of talking about it then. And then it was also our discovery of the new Apple emojis, like the balloons and thumbs up. That was the episode it happened on. Okay, so because I want all this time to be focused on the MCU, here we go. My bold prediction, first one in 2024, we can go quick with this, was I said we will get confirmation that Wanda Maximoff is not dead. And I think that's incorrect. In fact, if anything, Agatha kind of teased that maybe she is dead, or we definitely didn't get confirmation she's dead. Or not
That's
dead,
true.
Sorry.
That's true. Although we didn't get confirmation that she is. Like I think that it was just left as ambiguous as it was before.
Your first bold prediction was that Deadpool and Wolverine would become the highest grossing rated R film ever. And that's correct, right?
I think that is correct. Yeah.
Let me Google it while you talk. React to that for a second.
I think so. The last thing that I heard is it's 1.3 billion is what it wound up making.
Deadpool and Wolverine is currently the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. You said it was going to get over 1.1, and it's at... Yeah, it's over that. So
nice.
I guess congrats.
What I forget. What held the record beforehand? Was it Oppenheimer, or was it still like a Deadpool movie?
Remember, it was Oppenheimer and Joker is what we were talking about
right.
at the time last year.
Yeah.
But the argument was Deadpool 1 and 2 almost got to $1 billion, and it didn't even have the MCU fans necessarily behind it. And so add the MCU fans, and I think that's exactly what happened. So good job, you. My second bold prediction was that Spider-Man 4 would be announced before Christmas of 2024. And I said that it might come out Christmas of 2025, and it looks like it's now going to be Christmas of 2026. So I was 1 year off, I believe. It's not this Christmas. But again,
you were right with
area.
the announcement piece.
I don't think we've gotten like an official announcement. Like they haven't come out and said this is what it's going to be, but we know who the director is going to be already, and we know they're working on stuff. So I don't know.
We know that Tom Holland and Zendaya have read the script or a script.
Mm-hmm. Your second bold prediction was that the Fantastic Four, and this is what I don't know why we were doing it for this year, but the Fantastic Four will take place in an alternate universe, alternate timeline.
Wow.
And I think I'd say that was correct, right? Like we have had that confirmed.
I think they've confirmed that. Okay, that is crazy because that was before we had any of the like the poster or anything with the weird skyline in the background, right?
Correct. Again, I think that was Valentine's Day, February 14. This episode was released on February 6, 2024. So we were probably recording it February 1 or so. And so I think we hadn't had confirmation of that yet.
Wow. Nice.
Then I really shot my shot. My third bold prediction was that Michael Fassbender would cameo in Deadpool and Wolverine.
I wish.
That would have been a fun one to have happen, right? Like I think that one would have been up there with Chris Evans for me as like, well, here we go. And
I mean, if anything, I was kind of mad that they floated that and didn't deliver on it, like in the movie, not ahead of the movie. Like there's that scene where they're introducing everybody and Deadpool's like, is Magneto here? And they're just immediately like, oh no, like he was one of the first ones to go. And then like, I hadn't really thought about, I guess I forgot that you made that prediction. But in the moment, as soon as they floated it, I was like, man, I would take him or McKellen. That would be so great.
That's right.
But alas.
And then your last one, I think you got incorrect. I think you were 2 for 3. You said that Deadpool 3, we didn't even know it was called Deadpool and Wolverine yet, by the way. Or maybe we did, but we didn't refer to it as that. Deadpool 3 will give us a lot more time in the 838 universe and find out more about the Illuminati of that universe.
Nope.
I don't think we even got a reference, right, to the Foxverse. I mean, a few comments, but not specifically to that one.
Well, an 838 that's the multiverse of the Multiverse of Madness universe, right?
My bad. We obviously got references to the Foxverse. I meant to say that. Yes.
Yeah. No, I don't think we did. I think you're right.
And then lastly, looking at last year, this is really interesting. We had a long discussion to kick off our episode about Sony. And we talked about like one of the bold predictions almost was going to be that Sony would give up on their universe and their rights by the time we get to this year. And I think we 100% nailed that. We talked about how, well, they have Kraven lined up and they have Venom lined up, but if it's a box office fail, at some point they're just going to have to give it up. That's us last year. And it's funny to now fast forward a year. And I think that literally exactly happened. Kraven flopped at the box office. Sony's CEO or whatever came out and was like, this universe is probably going to be paused or done now. It just hasn't been working. It only took Morbius, Venom, Kraven before they finally were like, this isn't it, man.
Yeah. I mean,
but what's weird is they still think it's it as far as the coolness of the content. They just think like, did you see that? They just think that it's like our problem that we haven't gone and watched it enough.
I mean, I think it's just it's funny that you bring that up because Candace and I finally watched the third Venom last night.
Oh, and Madam Web. Oh yeah, I haven't seen that yet either.
She loves watching those movies, and we haven't seen Kraven yet either, but that's probably next on the list once it's streaming. But yeah, I mean, it's so weird. I think Venom was actually the worst thing that could have happened in that universe because it made so much money, like the first one and the second one, I think. And so it was like, we're making bad movies, but they still make money. And then, like Morbius and Madam Web don't make money, but it's like they still had the hope of Venom 3. And I don't even remember what the third Venom did at the box office. I know it wasn't on
I think
par
it did decent
with Craven. Yeah. But
yeah.
I will say, just because we probably won't talk about this movie again, I don't think it was the worst Venom movie.
No, well, Pete's a huge fan of the Venom series. I in general, I don't think the Venom movies have been terrible. I think they're probably the best part of that universe. That's not saying much, but they're not bad movies. They're
they're like, I mean, there are parts of them that feel like Deadpool movies, but they're weirder and not as funny. But Tom Hardy's doing stuff that is just like, it's never boring, which I know sometimes that's like, there are plenty of boring superhero movies, and that's not one of those. So, but I do think it's probably for the best that Sony has kind of given itself a farewell.
On that last Sony note you just made, we've talked about this a lot, but I play Warzone with a few friends from Michigan who aren't in the movie world at all. And they watch movies, but they don't follow it at all. And it's just amazing. Even a person who's pretty educated on film, we're playing last night and he brought up, what do you think of the new Marvel movie, Craven? And I was like, well, that's not Marvel Studios. And he didn't know any of this. So I literally, through the next Warzone game, walked him through the history of how this is a different thing, and even how the X-Men stuff was a different thing than it is now, et cetera. And it's just like, as a fan of that genre, he still didn't know. And so I was like, again, it's crazy. You can't expect fans to know that it's a different thing. But unfortunately, because of that, it all gets lumped into people like Phil's mind. And it's just a bummer. Yeah. Because it just comes across like, well, the comic book movies are tired and they're flopping and they're not working and they're not good. And it's just like, man, it's a different thing, but no one's going to know that. So thanks, Sony.
Yeah. I know. And I mean, I do think, to your point a couple years ago, whether you were thinking about it in this way or not, when you first expressed your concerns about the multiverse saga maybe giving way to a looseness or things just not quite having the same level of meaning that they did in the Infinity Saga, I do think, and I don't really think that this is a fault of Marvel Studios, but I think that in the prior decade, there was such a tight cast of characters still. The whole thing was this massive crossover of Infinity War. But in retrospect, you had the Guardians, and aside from that, you basically had the Avengers. That was kind of so if you had a movie, even Ant-Man, you have him go to the Avengers compound, and Anthony Mackie's in it. Everything was really tied to these specific characters. So I don't feel like Marvel had to worry about that in quite the same way. But then after Endgame, or at least after the pandemic, as they started kind of branching out, and then especially once you had No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness, where they're intentionally shouting out to things that are in different universes, I think at that point, the walls just fully came down for the average film goer, because it's okay, so Spider-Man is
right,
in
it just
Marvel
got
movies.
Confusing for them.
All the Spider-Men are in Marvel movies, but they're different.
Right,
but now I'm watching.
There were obviously positives to that, but to the casual, I guess the con of that is that you're going to have confusion, obviously, at this point.
Yeah.
There's even confusion. There's confusion amongst us mega fans. For example, this is a little bit different, but you and I are working on a saga so far for Daredevil, and even that's well, how much of it is technically the saga so far? And I'm a mega fan, and I don't fully know, So speaking of that, I just put out our screen recap of Captain America: Brave New World, which you wrote a fun script to. It's basically all the clips from everything you would need to know about Captain America before the new movie, so that if someone hasn't seen any of this stuff, you could show them this. Honestly, even if you've seen some of the stuff, because of the nature of the film, it's actually referencing a lot of like Falcon and Winter Soldier and the Incredible Hulk and just things you may not have actually seen or like at least need a dust up on. And so that was really, really fun to do. And you can go check that out now. But yeah, not only is that available now, as I was going back through the clips, I think I texted you a few times, like, it's just a reminder of how passionate I get and how passionate I am about the Infinity Saga. I know that's obvious at this point because it birthed the podcast, but even just capturing the clips of like Civil War, Tony Stark saying, "Did you know? Did you?" Just like, I get chills just from watching the one clip. I recorded the clip of Captain America putting the final shield right into Tony Stark's arc reactor and powering him down at the end of Civil War. And the theme is playing from Henry Jackman. Dun, 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 dun. And it literally made my wife and I sad. Like that was such a special moment, dude, in time.
Yeah.
It just will never be replicated for me. But that moment of just everything about that, seeing it makes me so sad. And like that movie, even though I know the ramifications are not long lasting in that, like Tony Stark does call Captain America and no one dies per se because of this. And it's not a civil war and that the whole country is torn apart. But every decision they make in that movie to lead to that moment resonates with me so much that even just watching that scene hurts my heart. Like it does work. Everything about it works for me. I don't care any of the logistics to get there. In that moment, I am so sad. The performance from Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. throughout that whole ending of just like, they both are doing what they feel like they have to do. And that sequence of Chris Evans falling off him with blood all over his face. And then Tony Stark like going like this, like, oh my gosh, he's actually going to try to kill me. We've gotten so far that he's going to kill me. And then just laying on the ground, they both laying on the ground. And it's so sad to me for some reason.
Yeah.
That's what the Infinity Saga did so well. It made me feel like it mattered so much that I'm watching that going like, oh guys, my two favorite people have such a bad disagreement that I just wish, it's one of those things where you're watching it going, I just wish it didn't go this way. Like it makes perfect sense how we got here, but I wish we could just go back and like prevent this from happening because they hate each other and it makes me so sad.
Yeah.
I love it.
No, I mean,
love
it's funny because we were talking about how many projects are factoring into Brave New World. And normally we try to make those recap videos a lot shorter, but this is one of the, like, I would think of all the movies that we'll have to do these recaps for, this is the one that has the most MCU history built into it, which I love because it's going back and like, I mean, some things from, I mean, all the things from the Captain America movies, but a lot from the Incredible Hulk is going to be a play between Harrison Ford showing up and the leader. But it is just like it was a really fun journey to go through as I was watching that stuff, trying to find things that we needed to include and talk about. And I like it because that's what I've been craving. Like that's something that I think we've both talked about wanting is an extension of that kind of vibe in the MCU. And I don't know that we've talked about this, and I don't know how much of the press that you've read, but I was reading another interview or piece about Brave New World, and at some point in the last couple of weeks, Marvel has really started marketing this movie as a like return to form, which is not to say like the other movies were bad and this one's going to be good. But like, this is going to be the kind of movie that we were making tonally 10 years ago, more so than the kind that we've been making the last few years. Like there's not multiverse stuff. There's not very much fantasy stuff. Like, and Anthony Mackie's been talking about like wanting to deliver like a classic Marvel movie experience to people. And all of that gets me excited. Just because like, you know, you go in phases and the pendulum swings, but I'm hoping that even though we won't have those moments again, that it allows for moments that can feel somewhat akin to that.
Right. How much of that moment is the decisions and the Russos and the directors and the writing versus the fact that it was Tony and Steve, like, you know,
right.
And that part we can't fix. This other stuff you could try to do better or do more like that, I guess I should say. But this part, how much of that is just the investment I have in those actors and those characters at that point. He was my friend. So was I.
Have we talked about, I'm sure we probably did at some point, but I think I mentioned this on our last episode that I've been going back and rereading the MCU book that Joanna Robinson co-wrote. And I had forgotten this. Evans, turned down Marvel Studios several times when they asked him to be Captain America, which I knew. But I think what I had forgotten is that to finally sign up, it took a call from Robert Downey Jr. saying, like, it's worth it. Like, sign on. It's like, I promise it's going to be great. Like, you're the right guy for the part. And so it's like, that to me even cements it more that, like, behind the scenes, there was this element of like he's the one that reached out and brought him in a way that, like, weirdly kind of mirrors the trajectory of those characters. So it was like, that made me happy and made me wonder what's gone on with the recent, like, their decisions to rejoin, and if something similar happened.
Literally watching those clips that I was putting together is also getting me excited for that. What you're talking about. Like, I've gone full circle from, leave their deaths and their endings perfect. Like, leave them alone, to now, like, I want it so bad just to see them interacting again that we'll just kind of see where we go from here. All right. Our bold predictions for 2025 after a quick word from these sponsors.
Okay, I will kick us off here because my first prediction kind of flows right out of what we were just discussing.
Okay.
And it relates to Brave New World and Daredevil and Thunderbolts.
Okay, he's stealing all of them. Got it.
And I think that my prediction is all three of these movies will actually be connected. Or projects will be connected. Daredevil's not a movie. I feel like that shouldn't even be that bold of a prediction because in a year, like in a prior era of the MCU, like, of course. But think about it. Like, how many times, like, think about 2021 or 2022 when we would be doing all these mega weeks, and how rare it was for there to ever be any connection between, like, Loki and Black Widow, or Multiverse of Madness and Moon Knight, or even No Way Home and Hawkeye, like, which maybe, like, you could argue is connected and works in our watch order that way, but not really. Like, they didn't really choose to take advantage of that. So I think now, in light of kind of what we've been hearing from Marvel about Brave New World, and just because of like what I'm kind of reading between the lines with Thunderbolts and Daredevil, I think that this is, like, I guess, half prediction and half me just trying to manifest it. But one of the things that you just kind of brought up about Civil War is that the consequences of that weren't necessarily super lasting, at least in terms of, like, the Civil War component. Like, they were lasting in that it broke up the Avengers, and therefore they were broken up when Thanos invaded. But Thanos invading kind of, like, immediately takes the whole Sokovia Accords, like, off the table for the moment anyway.
Which is fairly realistic, by the way. If something like that were to happen, I think the whole world would go, okay, forget what we were talking about legally.
Right.
Let's stop this alien race from attacking.
But, like, I think what's interesting is that doesn't really change any of the analysis there, right? Like, when, like, going back and rewatching Civil War, all the points that Ross and the UN are making still apply. Like, they're still operating kind of with no supervision or accountability. And I think that it's only a matter of time before we come back around to that. And especially with, like, the proliferation of even more super people in the wake of Endgame. And so I think what I'm hoping happens, and what I think could happen, starting with Brave New World, is kind of a chance to do parts of that post-Civil War era in the comics that they never really had time to explore, where you see like the Dark Avengers, like we've talked about. And I think that that could kind of merge with the Devil's Reign adaptation that we may be getting in Daredevil with like a Mayor Fisk that's also going after costumed vigilantes. And I think that Brave New World could maybe kick that off because it feels like it's all this kind of conspiracy movie. And there's part of me thinks that we're going to start that with Sam taking on the role very publicly, and then something happening where he's either like driven underground, or like the reputation of him and or the Avengers in general gets like totally destroyed, and leads to this, like, to the Thunderbolts being elevated. And like I would love it if Daredevil's happening in the midst of all that, because it's like we know Thunderbolts, like that they're going to be in Avengers Tower. So I don't know. It feels like an opportunity for all those to really connect, not just in like a handoff way, but in a way where they're actually creating like a moment in time in the MCU that I think we've only ever really gotten in that like original post-Civil War era, or like maybe like the original kind of phase 2 where everything felt really like something that happened here affected this.
I love that. It'll be interesting to see if there are any specific references between the three. Like, for example, will you get a reference to Mayor Fisk in Captain America? Like, I don't think he'll be in the movie, but will they give a throwaway line about it even?
Yeah, or at least in Thunderbolts.
Well, I know that one, but I'm trying to figure out if Daredevil fits. Like, I think almost certainly there's going to be some time between the two films. There's got to be a way. But I'm just trying to think too, like, how does Daredevil fit into that? Do any of the Daredevil ramifications make their way into the films?
I would think, well, Thunderbolts is the one where I think it would happen, just because they will at least at some point be in New York. So I feel like it would make sense to reference, and like Daredevil will have come out by the time, like I could see it not popping up in Brave New World because people wouldn't necessarily, like, unless it's just a little like preview. But in Thunderbolts, I would like, at that point we will have gotten all of Daredevil at that point, or will we be like mid Daredevil when Thunderbolts comes out?
It's something like, I think the finale week of Daredevil is the week of Thunderbolt release. I think it's something like that.
I think that's right, which would be perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect for a handoff, like you said. That's a great point. We haven't had that. It'll also be interesting for me to see if by the time Secret Wars comes around, if there will almost be a very obviously dedicated two separate teams of Avengers, where you say like, not Avengers per se, but that there's a ground level, street level Avengers that really have no interest in partaking in the multiversal stuff. Like, these are people I'm thinking, like, would they just not be a part of, quote, an Illuminati type group? Like, I'm saying, does Daredevil ever become an Avenger? I don't think there's any reason for him to ever be an Avenger. And then that makes me think, like, would you eventually have this thing where Daredevil, maybe even Sam Wilson, because he's not super powered, even maybe like a Winter Soldier, or Bucky, I should say, Yelena, I'd have to go through it, but like they become the ground level watchers, even Spider-Man maybe. And like they are protecting things on a small scale so much that when Secret Wars hits, we don't ask ourselves, well, what's Daredevil doing? I think we would just be like, okay, that's the ground level team. And right now we need like Doctor Strange and Wanda and maybe Shuri and, you know, who am I forgetting? But like, you know, on that side takes care of the multiversal stuff. A new like Iron Man or something, or a Bruce, you know.
Yeah.
Anyways. Okay, we got to keep moving. But like, I just wonder if it'll be very, very distinct and separate, those groups.
Yeah. I mean, and in some ways that would track Hickman's Avengers, where you have the Avengers and the Illuminati kind of operating in parallel, and like Tony's in both groups, but they're playing very different roles.
Yeah. Okay. I have a bold prediction that is going to lead to a lot less discussion, this first one. And this, I don't think, is super bold. So my bold predictions go from least bold to more bold by the end, okay?
Nice.
So least bold, maybe. I'm trying to tack something on to make it even more bold. The Fantastic Four film. I'm also going to work in reverse order from what you did. The Fantastic Four film will have a Rotten Tomato critic score of over 90%, and it will win one of the major awards. And I don't know if I can be so bold to say which one yet, but it's going to win maybe like here's my thing. I think the Academy, I can see this world where the Academy appreciates that it's a very different kind of superhero movie. Like it's a 60s thing. Matt Shackman takes a different direction. I could see it being kind of colorful and lots of interesting set pieces and costumes and things like that if they really lean into it. So I could see the Academy viewing it as really fresh. And so I wonder if it's going to win something with that, like the set design or, but I think obviously gross over $1 billion, have a Rotten Tomato score over 90 and win one of the major awards.
Wow. I like that. I mean, even like I would just love to see it get best score, if nothing else.
Yeah, like that. I will count that as a bold prediction, correct prediction, if that is the case.
Yeah.
Okay, number two.
Well, now I'm torn on the order of how I want to do these, but
and last thing too, I'll also just say the cast of that movie feels like an Academy type cast, where it's a bunch of like really cool, vibey, right now very trendy, good actors that are a part of it, that are all kind of like, they're not necessarily A-listers. Like it's not Tom Cruise doing it, but it's just kind of like a artsy pick, I feel like.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. Especially like Joseph Quinn, I feel like is very much like an up and comer still, in a good way. Okay. I was really torn between two, and I'm going to make another Captain America prediction because my last one I feel like was more Thunderbolts Daredevil focused, but I do think all of them will feed into each other. But my other like totally different Brave New World prediction, as I was putting together the script for the recap, and there's so much stuff in there about Ross and about the leader. Like, I really think we are going to get some kind of Bruce update in Brave New World.
Okay.
Because I was also thinking about it, like Doomsday is a little over a year from now. The last update we had on Bruce was She-Hulk, which was like it was a big update on him in that we found out he was able to kind of get back into full Hulk form. But then there's also some like weird stuff hanging out there with his son. And I'm just like, some of that's going to have to be addressed before we see him again in the Avengers context. And the truth is, Marvel knows a lot of people just didn't watch She-Hulk. So I think that they are not going to be able to count on people and don't want to count on people having seen that update. So I feel like whether it's a name check of like, oh, Banner's been whatever for however long, who knows where he is, or if it's like a post-credit scene. But I feel like we can't have a movie that focuses this much on a Hulk and not talk about Banner.
Also, besides, Tony Stark and Captain America are gone. Thor, I think the argument would be, is he's not from Earth. So he's Asgardian. He could be anywhere. And I don't think it's like Earth's responsibility to be keeping track of where Thor is. I do think that Bruce would be the next one as far as crazy, smart, and overpowered, superpowered human being that's from Earth, that is also a genius scientist, and basically is the lone remaining like face of the Avengers. Like there's not really another, like Clint has kind of retired. Natasha's dead.
Yeah.
He's kind of like our Avengers. Like if you're going to check in on the Avengers, you got to find out what Bruce is doing. Kind of.
And I was thinking like there was a phase where it wouldn't have made sense even like like after Civil War, or really after Age of Ultron, like you never really had a lot of interaction between Bruce and Sam. But then I was thinking like the very end of Endgame, whenever Steve goes back, like that's Bruce and Sam and Bucky there. Like they're, they're like, we'll get him the hell back line. Like they are on, they're friends. Like they're people that hang in superhero context. So I just feel like that's the other thing. Like if
I want to be
even
friends
beyond,
with the Hulk.
I mean, I want to be friends with Mark Ruffalo. I just think that like, if nothing else, they're going to have to do something to explain why Sam's first call would not be to Bruce.
He could be off-world. We found out in She-Hulk that he is able to go back and forth with alien people. And there's a very good chance, I think, that he could have taken one of those ships and left for now. And that could be their answer.
Yeah, that will lead to my honorable mention, not bold prediction, but bold ask, I guess, at the end of this.
You know what? And that just led to a different thought for me. We need to do an episode probably before Brave New World, for sure, obviously before Doomsday, of just a Where Are They episode. Basically a very quick version of the saga so far. A few people on Discord were talking about that. Then Greg apparently has a document that he has started with just like logistically, where is everybody right now? Because I just now also remembered, this is a deep cut, Peter Quill is on Earth.
That's so funny you said that, because I was just thinking about that. Yeah.
I literally didn't think about that for like a year and a half. And then right now it hit me. Yeah, like he technically could be involved in anything.
But the thing is, there's nobody on Earth that would know. I mean, maybe Carol, but nobody would know how to, because it's like Thor.
He would have to come forward.
Yeah.
And because then he could say like, I fought Thanos alongside Iron Man on Titan. You didn't see that part, but I was up there.
Yeah. Which would also be kind of fun, because it would kind of be back to him being like, I'm Star-Lord.
Oh, dude. I'm getting chills thinking about that. Like we were talking about like these different levels of investment and what characters would you have that in? I just think any kind of connective tissue on that front, now that Peter Quill's on Earth, that to me is a cool, like there's so many cool storylines there. You know how I love those interactions. Even just, remember we talked about Tony talking to Doctor Strange, and it's like a clash of two worlds.
Wait, you're right. Tony, well, no, but that doesn't matter. I was going to say Tony knows Quill, but Tony's not.
Yeah, he's dead.
Oh, but Spider-Man does. Peter does. He won't know Peter.
But he won't know Peter.
Yeah.
That's really good, actually. That's really good.
That'll be, that we have to get a scene.
That's what I'm saying. There's so many.
Right?
I'm just now thinking like there's so many interactions that'd be so fun. He'd be like, I fought Thanos. And they'd be like, who are you? And he'd be like, this guy, wait, who's Spider-Man? Wait, who is this? He wouldn't know. Like there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
People wouldn't maybe believe him. And he doesn't have superpowers. So like, does he still have his weapons? Like alien weapons and stuff? Otherwise, what's making him super strong anymore?
Yeah.
Does he have any ship to like get back with the Guardians if he wants to?
Yeah, I forget.
Again, this is cool. This is a good idea.
This is fun. I also am realizing like that is, I really need to rewatch Guardians 3. I don't think I've seen it since theaters.
Yeah, same. Okay. Change of subjects here. My second bold prediction is that one of the Thunderbolts will die by the end of the film.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's right.
So if I wanted to go even more bold, you'd have to name the person. I started thinking about the group, and as always, there can be. There can. Yeah. Yelena's not going to die.
Yeah.
There are so many factors. That's what I was going to say with this stuff. The off-screen stuff matters a ton. Like I think part of the reason Natalie Portman died is because, I'm not saying she didn't like it, but behind the scenes, I'm sure she's probably not clamoring to be like, no, I want this for 10 years.
Right.
So I thought like, Winter Soldier is a perfect character to have die. He's finally made peace with his past. He really has nothing else to live for. All of his friends are gone. Depending on what happens with Anthony Mackie's Falcon or Captain America, I don't know how much he's in touch with him. So it would make perfect sense that he lays down his life for somebody in the Thunderbolts and goes out a hero, right? That'd be a perfect ending to his story. But now, Like literally today, Sebastian
Yeah.
Stan is nominated for Best Actor in one of his movies. So now
Yeah.
you're kind of getting in that Florence Pugh territory where it's like, does Marvel Studios want to take an actor who's up for Best Actor
And won a Golden Globe.
and wants to be a part of it? Like anytime he talks, he is proud of his Marvel Cinematic Universe work. Like very proud of it.
And is one of the people that's been at the core of the franchise for so long now.
So do you have enough cojones or like is it smart even to take someone like that and take him off the table? So that's where it's so tough. Like I started this prediction with the idea that Winter Soldier was going to die. And then I was like, but wait, I don't know if they're going to do that if he wants to be a part of it. It's kind of like, are you going to kill Spider-Man if he really wants to keep going?
Right.
You know, I don't think you're not going to kill Daredevil if he wants to keep going. Like Thor is a larger candidate for dying.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean,
but
and the Thunderbolts, you could kill Ghost probably.
Well, okay. So I'm thinking about the Thunderbolts. Then I start thinking, okay, well then who is expendable? Here's the problem with this thinking though. There are characters that I think that if they kill, they are aware that it might be a little bit too much like Quicksilver, where we didn't really tell enough story with that character before killing it. And then the backlash might be that they were just there to die. So for example, would they kill Taskmaster, or do they see this as a chance to kind of like tell new stories about Taskmaster and kind of redeem that character and, or write that in a different way or something? Or have they said enough about Ghost to have her die? And so it's tough to say. Like a little bit of the same thought applies to David Harbour with Red Guardian. Like if he's proud of it and he likes it, I don't know they'll kill him. But I do think that one of them's going to go. Somebody's going to be the casualty. Maybe it's John Walker. Maybe it's Red Guardian. Maybe it's Ghost. So we'll see.
I do think a Red Guardian death I could see hitting pretty hard. Because there are moments, like I rewatched Black Widow not long ago, and there's some pretty emotional moments.
Freaking good.
Like, man, like the him and Yelena scene when he's singing American Pie at the end. Like, I could see, and because they're both in it, like you could get that emotion from her reaction to it.
And we've gotten kind of, not in a bad way, but we've gotten enough of the Red Guardian. Like, there's not that much more to tell. It's kind of a buffoon who's really strong, right?
And he's like he's not in his prime anymore. So it's like, it's not as though we're going to see him like ascend in the way that we would someone like even Ghost, who could arguably stick around for a while and like develop into a different version of herself.
Red Guardian might be the best guess, actually. Yep.
That's a good thought.
Because I also don't know that David Harbour, when he signed up for it, he's proud of it, but was anticipating a 5-movie, character arc of this guy.
And it will be like, I'm just thinking about where you leave things. And if we have him and Bucky and John Walker and Sam Wilson out there somewhere, we now have like 4 super soldier type or like captain type characters. And that feels like too many.
Okay. I'll go a step further. Yep. Red Guardian will die by the end of Thunderbolts. There you go.
Wow.
Okay. Bold prediction number 3 for you.
Okay. So I'm making this now, even though it will probably be borne out more in 2026, but I'm making it now because I think we may get a little bit of it in Fantastic Four. And I feel like by the time we're doing this at the beginning of 2026, we may know too much for it to still be a bold prediction. But I've been thinking about it more. And I really do think that, like, reading between the lines of like Russo comments, RDJ comments, what Kevin Feige said, I feel like what they are doing with like Tony or with RDJ as Doom is going to be a straight up like inverse Infinity Saga storyline. Like the same journey that we saw Tony take across the Infinity Saga, I think it's going to be like that, except instead of him rising and giving himself up for the world to stop Thanos, I feel like it's going to be like him rising up and like going even harder into like instead of like leaving behind weapons manufacturing so he can like save and protect people, I think it's going to be like going even harder into that and into like the intellectual side. And you see like all of the instincts that like Steve helped temper across like Age of Ultron with like the man was not meant to meddle medley, like all of these influences on him that kept him from just creating Ultron straight up, or kept him from like doing whatever he thought was best, because there was always someone in the room to pull him back a tad. Like I feel like we might be getting a universe where it's just those forces aren't exerting on him. And so it's like still Tony in a way that's recognizable to us, but like it's not like, oh, it's Tony, but he's evil. It's Tony that's like given into all of the worst impulses. And that naturally leads to him, like, I think, and the reason I love this is I think it can still end with him as Iron Man, because like what I love about it, even setting aside like the Invincible Iron Man or the infamous Iron Man comic that everyone's referenced since that announcement, what I love is like those are just two characters in the comics that famously have metal masks. So it's such an easy, like, slight adjustment to even like the costume, where it could be like he has all the same sensibilities as a Tony Stark, but he's just like, instead of red and gold, going like gray and green or something.
Okay, so your prediction's actually Doctor Doom will be the inverse of Tony Stark in the Infinity Saga, through the Infinity Saga. I don't love that I can't follow up on that in a year, because we won't know for a year and a half. So, you know,
well, I feel like
it's an interesting theory.
Well, I guess my other, like the other piece of that is I think that we're going to be introduced to Tony in the Fantastic Four, at least in a credit scene. And that's why I make it now, because I feel like that might.
Okay, hold on. Okay, in this prediction, theoretically, will his name be Tony? You're saying this will be Tony Stark. Like, you will see a guy named Tony Stark from a different universe in the Fantastic Four film. Like that, you mean? And then by the time the movie rolls around, like by the end of that movie, he officially like calls himself, he changes his name to Doctor Doom.
Well, I don't know at what point in that narrative we find him, but I do think that my prediction is that he is Tony Stark. Like, I don't know if we're going to find
him. He's not
and
Victor
it's like,
Von Doom.
Yeah, I think so. Just because it would be so strange. Like, I mean, it could be like, you know, it's like in Multiverse of Madness, we have a version of Stephen Strange that speaks Spanish, but it's like, he also speaks English in a normal English accent. So or a normal like American accent. So I'm just not sure how much we're like changing. Like, I feel like if they cast RDJ here, it's not just because they're like, oh, he's a great actor and this is a role we have, so like, let's just sign him up. Like, there's a clear connectivity or they wouldn't do it. And I just don't see a world where we're going to get him speaking in this like Eastern European accent, or being from like, I mean, I don't know. I don't think he would be from Latveria. I think he would maybe create Latveria. Or maybe Latveria become, like, maybe that's Sokovia. And again, you're seeing like all these different junctures where it's like, instead of Tony going to like help defend Sokovia, Sokovia becomes the spot where Ultron is born by Tony's design. And then he builds that out into his own like headquarters that is like country-sized, which could also impact like some fun Scarlet Witch stuff and other, like, I just think that it's I don't know, it is a very bold prediction, but it makes more and more sense to me the more I think about it.
Yeah. That makes, because what they always do is they take a famous comic story and they make it an MCU version that's never exactly the same comic story. And so that would make total sense to keep it within the MCU. Like the Sokovia thing, that's clutch. Like, you might as well do that then if you have it, you know?
Yeah, and just because, I mean, I would think differently if we were getting a Fantastic Four movie. One, if we didn't know RDJ was coming in as Doctor Doom, or two, if Fantastic Four was coming out after Secret Wars, I would feel differently. But I just don't think that you have enough time to create a compelling backstory for Doctor Doom that isn't somewhat hooked into what we've already gotten.
Okay. My third bold prediction and final bold prediction, and this is really shooting my shot. You're going to like this. I'm trying to think of the context of how, but I think you're going to see Steve Rogers in Brave New World.
Whoa. Wow. Yeah, no, that gasp is real. In what way? Like,
yeah, old
physically
old
present.
Steve. Old man Steve.
Okay.
And,
yeah.
Like the same thing that we were debating pre Falcon and Winter Soldier. Will there be a moment? So here's my thing. I think if there wasn't news of Chris Evans coming back for Doomsday and like what they're going to do with Secret Wars and all that, I think Marvel would just stay away from it. So like at the time with Falcon Winter Soldier, I think they were like, no, we need to really lean into a new Captain America. Steve Rogers is gone. We're going to pour into Sam Wilson, and no, he's off the table. And I think also for the actors, emotionally, they were off the board for the most part. I think maybe about that time, Robert Downey Jr. started calling the Russos and debating what they could do and all this stuff. But I think Chris Evans was probably out of the game entirely. So I think they really wanted to go out of their way. And I was making that friendly reminder, our screen recap of Brave New World. And there's a scene in Falcon and Winter Soldier where Sam says, Steve Rogers is gone. And I remember noting that they didn't say dead. He doesn't say inaccessible.
Yeah.
He just says kind of gone in front of the whole museum crowd. And I just wonder if now that they know he's coming back, if they now, and because Chris Evans made a cameo in Deadpool and Wolverine, if they now know like, okay, this isn't untouchable anymore. Like what we did in Endgame lasted for the 6 years that it happened or whatever. But now let's start getting the audience's trust built back up. Like let's start giving them hints at what could be coming. Like if the people want more Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, like let's lean into it. I also wonder if some of the reshoots had something to do with that. Like that would be something maybe they decide to reshoot and add to the film. Now, obviously he's not a major player in this, but could there ever be a scene where Sam Wilson goes to this like private house somewhere else for advice and it's old man Steve? Or is there at least just a reference? I know there's a reference as far as you're not Steve Rogers. I know that.
Right.
But is there a reference more?
They have included that line in every possible promo that they can.
Right.
Have you noticed
but is there
that?
Something more direct? Of Sam specifically calling him maybe for advice on the phone or just something like that.
I know. It's so interesting that we just have zero context for where he actually is.
Right. Like I get it. They wanted to say like he is retired. He lived a life. It's not the same person you know anymore. And he's just not here. But I wonder if things could ever get bad enough that Sam would be like, but can I just call him to ask him what he would do? Or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe he is on the moon.
Yeah, maybe he is. So there you go. There's our bold predictions for 2025. Fantastic Four will have a critic score of 90%, gross over $1 billion, and win a major award. One of the Thunderbolts will die, Red Guardian specifically, and you'll see Steve Rogers in Captain America. And Robbie says the next 3 projects will be connected, Brave New World, Daredevil, and Thunderbolts. Bruce update is coming within Brave New World, and Doctor Doom's story will kind of be the inverse of what happened to Tony Stark in the Infinity Saga in his own universe. And then we're going to end today's episode by saying you can include one honorable mention. What is something you would like to see happen? You're not saying this is going to happen, but what are you craving and where could this be headed? You take the floor first and I'll close us out.
So I was thinking about, again, obviously the Hulk a lot recently. And I was just thinking like, man, I want the Hulk to show up, and I don't really want sci-fi Hulk. Like I know everyone's talking about like Planet Hulk and doing something like really big and like bombastic, and that could be fun, and you could do that in a way that would sort of also be what I'm asking for. But I think what I really would love is like I want like a Sam Raimi directed Immortal Hulk like horror movie. Like I want to see Bruce, and the reason for that in part is like Mark Ruffalo is getting older. He's not old, but he's getting older. And I think that is something that it would be really interesting to let it go back to this like fear of like a real monster inside of him. Not that he's going to go out and just like start murdering people left and right or something, but like something that's actually frightening to him and to us, like in the way that it was in like the Avengers. Like one thing that I loved so much is like the drama of the moment when he changes in the helicarrier attack.
Yeah, right.
And how like Natasha's just like
horrified.
Legitimately terrified. Yeah. Like I want that. And I think that there's so much room for Mark Ruffalo to do some like really interesting stuff with that I just don't think he can do if they just like keep going down the Planet Hulk route. And I just feel like World War Hulk route, which is like the sequel of Planet Hulk. Because I feel like we've gotten that in different ways between the
Ragnarok
Avengers movies and Ragnarok. Yeah. So I'm like, I feel like I want to get a really solid Mark Ruffalo Hulk performance before he hangs it up. And I like that's exactly what it would be. And that may have to wait probably would have to wait until after Secret Wars, but
the Hulk is a really fun part of the first Avengers when I was making those clips. Like I also, not only the horror there, but I love too when Captain is like genuinely surprised that he shows up on the motorcycle and Tony's like tell him to suit up. Like I knew this was going to happen. And then you're right. Putting together the screen recap like changed our lives. But yeah, like going back and putting together the clips of even the intro credits to the Incredible Hulk. It's like the horror of him actually murdering people.
Yeah.
Even honestly, the way Abomination looks when he first turns and kind of the horror of what's happening. We haven't had that in a long time. And I think you're right that that's the next logical step. Like, it would be fun to get that kind of like, oh my gosh, this beast is unleashed. Now they're kind of flirting with it in that What If episode, you know, like,
yeah.
I feel like
true.
It's at least on their minds when you do something like that. I'm with you. It would be fun to go back to the core of that character. Okay. My honorable mention, and you're going to hate this, I think. And I'm not like, I don't even know how I feel about this because it's the exact opposite of what you said. Marvel has kind of always had these different prongs and these different branches where you say, okay, you know, Winter Soldier's pretty grounded street level. And then you kind of got Ragnarok where this is taking place on a different planet and these are gods and look what they can do. But there's something about the end of the third phase that felt so special in that it's weird because they don't directly do this, but there's a tiny bit of kind of a merging of the two where it became less and less these people were over here on the ground level and these people are handling the big picture galactic stuff. And there started becoming like this merge, you know, with the Guardians meeting Spider-Man, like we talked about, or the way Ragnarok is this movie that takes place on all these different planets, but then in the post-credit sequence, like Thanos arrives and takes the Infinity Stone. That's going to kick us off, and that's going to directly impact people like Sam Wilson, even though you never thought Sam Wilson and Thanos would ever interact. Well, I put a clip together. They do. He tries to attack him. It doesn't make sense, and he's hopelessly outmatched, but the world's merged. And so this is going to sound so weird to say. I love that we're about to get a look at the ground level for the next three projects. I just want the smallest taste, though, of connectivity between that and the multiversal saga. I don't want to get to the end of Thunderbolts and feel like that was so isolated that there's not even a single thing that I could figure out how this ties into the greater story with the multiverse stuff. It is the multiversal saga. And so even as tiny as Ant-Man and the Wasp having nothing to do with anything on a galactic level until the post-credit sequence, and then he gets dusted, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's in the quantum realm, and he's getting dusted. Now we're talking about some kind of, galactic type stuff.
Yeah. And then it becomes crucial.
So I just kind of want that somewhere at the end of Thunderbolts or Captain America, there's like a shout out to, I don't know what, Doctor Strange is trying to figure some stuff out, or I can't call, the beginning of connectivity, and that the movie doesn't just feel like, hey, we made a Winter Soldier type film in 2025 that has nothing to do with anything else we've been setting up. And I know that's weird because that's what we're saying we're craving. But do you get where I'm coming from at all? Like some kind of tie-in to what we're trying to do.
Well, and it does make me happy that we have the Tiamat hand in Brave New World.
That's a good example.
That's like a step in that direction.
Yeah, it's not tying into the thing I'm wanting to, but but yes.
But it is like that's one of those things that they could just...
That's a good word.
Not touch, that they're choosing to.
Right, and like can Daredevil, which is so grounded, and I want it to stay grounded, but it's now directed by Moorhead and Benson. Like, could it somehow... Could there even be one line about something, or like the Avengers team has got other stuff going on, or they're, I don't know. I don't know what.
I think it would be fun. Like the opportunity for Thunderbolts there, I think, if they do go like a Dark Avengers route with it, is, you could get really bold and basically end that movie in a similar spot to where you ended the first Avengers, except instead of like, okay, now we have this Avengers team that's going to protect the world from like the coming threat of like an inevitable other alien invasion. Like maybe there is some way that they are keyed into some like multiversal stuff going on. Like maybe it's breaking through, and just at the end of that movie, this is the super team that's like set to do it, but it's being run by like super shady people within the government.
Let me give you another example. Ant-Man is a super grounded character, but we just watched him in Quantumania run into a Kang. And so he's now out of the quantum realm. And remember that film ends where he's like, we did stop him, right? Because he said there was all this other stuff in multiverse and like it was going to end. So for example, like, has anyone checked in on him? Does he feel like he needs to share what he just learned about Kang and how it was one of many Kangs? And like, does he need to share that with Bruce? That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, where can we just have that movie and then just pretend like it didn't affect anybody else? That's the kind of stuff where I think you and I are a little bit different this way, and I'm different than some of the audience in that, in general, I think I do like the galactic kind of more sci-fi stuff in the MCU more than the average person. Like a lot of people would say Winter Soldier is their favorite film. I wouldn't say it's my favorite movie. I can watch it and go, that's amazingly well done, but it's not totally hitting on all of the genres that I like. Right. So here's my thing. I think for me, my favorite version of the MCU is not just that we have grounded films, like we talked about with Winter Soldier and what we hope Brave New World is. I like that. But it's when those grounded characters are forced to interact with the ungrounded things that's so mind-blowing to me. So that's why Infinity War is so cool. It's when, like, all the movies that are just galactic are not my favorite. Like Guardians 2, when it gets so weird and it's like this has no tie to what I know as the MCU, that's not my favorite. But then when it's also just straight like Winter Soldier, that's not my favorite either, because there doesn't seem to be any kind of tie into the greater dread that we're building with calling it even the multiverse saga. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I love the grounded stuff that I love the grounded stuff that
Iron Man and Iron Man 2.
I love those because of, I think, when they came out and what they kicked off. And so there's a lot of factors to this. I'm not saying it's the only thing.
No. But I think
But even more than Iron Man, I love seeing Tony have to deal with the dread of the Avengers, like being attacked by an alien race. And now all of a sudden, like his world just had to get way bigger. And then that, keyed off an entire domino effect of, well, now I got to do this to protect Earth. And then that does this and that does this. Like, that's the kind of stuff I like even more. I mean, this, like I even talk about how much like Age of Ultron's not a better movie than the first Avengers, but there's something about that era that's so fun. And it's partially because Tony's panicked about, the world just got a lot bigger.
No.
So
I think, I hear you. And I do think I keep forgetting about Quantumania not as a movie, but within the context of the building narrative, because it was just so weird how it was billed as like the start, with Kang, and then was just
but
so
he's
quickly
aware
scrapped.
of Kang, theoretically.
Right. And they didn't like, I think the other interesting thing is like in the like Loki season 2 came out just over a year ago now, and that show did not do anything to walk back any of the Kang stuff. And that, like, they had the opportunity to. Now, granted, they were waiting, I think, on like the actual court ruling and all that stuff. But I think that I think that they've now done too much to not follow up with that. And you're right. If they're going to follow up with it, I think it has to be through Scott. And Scott is kind of a ground level character.
Right. The origin of that thought was not only the films I liked, but just, okay, if they were going to hint at some connectivity to any kind of multiversal thing, who actually within the story is even aware of that? Like, how could they even do that? So I started thinking like, okay, everything Loki's experienced, no one else knows about. There's no way to pass along what Loki's been doing, right? So there's not connectivity there.
Right.
I thought about how Doctor Strange is aware, like at the end of his movie, that Clea or whatever comes out and like he can jump into another dimension. So he's aware now because of America. By the way, that's another one. Like, what's America and Wong doing?
Oh, yeah,
so, like,
yeah.
But I'm trying to think, like, where are the tie-ins? And then I thought about Ant-Man. And I was like, well, Ant-Man knows about the quantum realm, but he also ran into Kang and heard about the legends of this character.
Yeah.
That's why one of my bold predictions was almost going to be that I think you're going to see something of Kang. But I didn't say it because I don't think it's going to happen in these 3 films, but I think it's not going to be dropped 100%. I think there's going to be something still that's going to happen with him. And I'm not saying I want it, or I'm not saying it's like the thing, but I'm just thinking like the way they double down on stuff like the Celestial Hand and the connectivity we're missing and Thor Dark World, the Infinity Stones we always talk about, all this stuff. Yeah, they're doubling down on the Incredible Hulk, like the leader. We haven't heard from the leader in, what is it now, 16 years?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a movie that people used to say you didn't even have to watch.
I think once like a year has passed on the Jonathan Majors stuff, especially if he ever gets back into acting, right. And even if it's not Jonathan Majors, I think you'll get some references or lines at least to what happened to him or what he's doing or whatever. And I'm way backing up. I think I'm ready to start seeing some connection between the 2 kinds of movies.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And I like, we have to get that this year. Like, we have to. Like, we have to get like something starting to converge, because I just don't think that we can do all of that. Like, even like Winter Soldier did that a little bit between Avengers and Age of Ultron. Like, without like there were even then movies that kind of moved things a little bit more into position, even though the Avengers, like, even though Age of Ultron did most of that, like, okay, and here's the update with everybody. Right. You still have to get people into the right places. So
last thing, 45 seconds max. I do wonder if the Parliament at Marvel Studios is a little bit wrestling with this too, because I do wonder if when they first launched Phase 4, they were thinking, let's just give all these directors like leeway and, let's make all these different kinds of projects and that'll be fun. And then somewhere around Phase 5, they were like, we're going to actually do Secret Wars and Doomsday. And now I do wonder if there's a little bit of them sitting around going like, man, we didn't like build up to this in the way, like Doomsday's coming out next year. And we didn't really quite build up to this in the way that we were kind of hoping. So like, I wonder if that's part of the rumors with Spider-Man 4, because Doomsday comes out next summer, then Spider-Man comes out at Christmas time, and then it's Secret Wars the following year. And at first you saw these rumors of Spider-Man is going to be this grounded film, or is it going to be this multiversal film? And there's all these leaks about each one. Yeah. And I do wonder if there's a little bit of them that goes, we want Spider-Man to be a grounded character and have a grounded film, but how can we make a Spider-Man 4 that's not multiversal when this just happened with Doomsday? Like, how can we make a movie that exists in between these two that's not multiversal? So I wonder if they're a little bit also debating this where they sit right now as well. That's all.
And you have to think about the movies that have guaranteed eyes on them. Like, Thunderbolts does not have guaranteed eyes because there's the lack of like property recognition for people. Now, Florence Pugh, Sebastian Stan are big enough actors that people recognize to pull them in, but like not on the level of any movie that has Spider-Man in the title. So if you're going to do something that is pivotal plot-wise, that's a movie where you should do that. Like they haven't really taken advantage of that element of the prior Spider-Man films, but like in how like essential they are to the ongoing MCU narrative. But I think that this, like now as they're lacking like an Iron Man or a Captain America, like a Steve Rogers Captain America to be that,
right.
I think that they have to be even more careful to use that real estate wisely.
I think that's just their problem though. You know, it's like, that goes against everything we've talked about for Spider-Man 4. Like he finally doesn't have tech and now he's a poor kid making his own suit and he can be ground level. Like that's all the stuff we talked about. Fisk, and maybe it's Mayor Fisk instead that he's battling. And it's all this stuff. And now I'm sitting here thinking like, but I don't know if they can do that. I don't know if they can actually do that. If they had waited and Spider-Man was in 2027 at Christmas, post Secret Wars, that seems like the logical follow-up to what he's been doing. But now it feels like they're kind of thrust right back into, is he going to be a centerpiece of a multiversal story when it's going against everything we just kind of set up in the Homecoming trilogy? You know,
isn't it kind of funny how like, I feel like we've talked about how, or I've talked about how things were compressed a bit more than I would have preferred at the end of the Infinity Saga. Not in a way that really like impacted the quality of the individual projects, but more just like, man, I loved that era so much. I do wish that we had like there's a part of me, and this would have been disastrous with the pandemic, but like setting that aside, there's a part of me that wishes that like Infinity War came out in 2019 and Endgame came out in 2020, and we just would have had like a second more. And then in the multiverse saga, it's felt like so long now since all this stuff was first announced in the aftermath of Endgame. And then it's a real like hurry up and wait thing, or more like wait and then hurry up, because it's like we've been like, where's it going to go? Where's it going to go? Where's it going to go? And now all of a sudden it's like, there's no time, which is true.
Because it's like, it's next summer.
Yeah.
They're filming it.
Yeah. It's strange because like this is the one that they actually had the ability to blueprint out in a way that they didn't really have all the way through with the Infinity Saga, because they didn't quite know like what was going to work and what they could run with.
My only other thought there though is like, I think Doomsday, the actual movie, is going to be doing way more weight carrying on this front than we ever thought originally. So maybe the whole movie is just set up. The whole movie. Yeah. Maybe it never actually gets anywhere. It's like Across the Spider-Verse, where the very end of the movie is like, you know?
Yeah. Which would be, I would like that is different from Infinity War, which really is just like, Infinity War is all the buildup was to Thanos is coming, really. And then Infinity War is just like happening.
Right. That's such a good point. When we say the buildup, we were talking about the Infinity Stones being introduced. We got to go here, but sorry, this is not a short episode. These are my favorite episodes. These are my favorite episodes to talk about this
These
stuff.
Are fun episodes. But people are like, are these bold predictions at this point?
Yeah, I know. But I think people like this stuff. This is my favorite. If you're an MCU fan, this is my favorite world to live in.
I like this stuff.
I'm people and I like it. Just really quick, when we talk about what was the buildup to Infinity War, it's really the Infinity Stones being hinted at. Right? Mm-hmm. Like from 2011, 12 on, they were hinted at. So that's one thing. And it's that one guy is capable of getting them. No one else, but there's one character, his name's Thanos, who's capable of getting him. And that really was kind of hinted at in Guardians. I would say 2014 is when that started being like, okay, we know there's Infinity Stones, but now someone can actually get them and build a weapon that's capable of holding them.
Yeah.
So I think that was like we've talked about this so many times, but that's like the perfect storm where they could have those two things kind of operating in the background, and you didn't question why Iron Man 3 was not building up toward that, because you just kind of assumed, well, it's taking Thanos some time, that sounds dumb, but like it was like cake and eat it too, they could do both things. But I think you're right now. We're like, what is the build up to Secret Wars? It's that there's incursions. It's that kind of like Loki, where like there are timelines that need to be tended to or watched, or there are things like there are rules that you can't break, otherwise they start messing with the timeline. I guess that's kind of the buildup. But I do wonder if because of that, it like Doomsday, we're thinking of it through the lens of Infinity War, where it's Thanos arriving.
Yeah.
This is maybe not just Doomsday arriving. Dr. Doom arriving. This is maybe the origin of Dr. Doom in Doomsday.
Yeah.
And it's maybe more of a callback to Avengers 1, where you know how the first 15 minutes of that movie is going to each Avenger?
Yeah.
What are they doing right now? Can you join a team? Can you come help us?
Yeah.
I wonder if there'll be some of that where it's called Avengers Doomsday, but it's like Dr. Doom is rising to power throughout the movie, and somebody's tasked with like, dude, call Bruce. Let's figure out what Doctor Strange is doing. Why isn't he here? Let's figure out, and like you have to, and it's more that than it is like the imminent attack.
I like the Avengers and the Across the Spider-Verse comparison, because you're right. Those are, well, especially Across the Spider-Verse, because it's this like, you really don't understand the stakes until the end of that movie.
The last 10 minutes.
And then it's done. Yeah. And it's like, oh, wow. And now we just have to sit in it. You're right. It's like, you don't even really know who the main antagonist is until you're a good ways in. Like, you don't expect it to be Spot. You're not really sure what's going on with Miguel. And the whole thing is like unfurled so slowly, but so well. I would love that, to where it's like the total opposite of what we've gotten really in every other Avengers movie. Certainly everyone but the first.
Right. It would be doing a lot more plot work, I guess, than Infinity War. Infinity War, as we've talked about, is really just a smash and grab. It's not much plot. It's that all the plot had been built up to already. We did all the groundwork, but now it's like we just need to see what it looks like when a guy tries to get all the stones. Like now he's actually ready to make his move. I don't think this will be that. This is going to be doing a lot more of the lifting. Yeah. And so that's why I don't think I have to be as panicked about what is Thunderbolts doing for that.
Yeah.
But it does still leave Spider-Man 4 in a really interesting spot, because if Spider-Man 4 is directly following up what Across the Spider-Verse did, like at the very end of the film, Dr. Doom is all powerful, or he's figured out something with the incursions or whatever, and the Avengers team is just getting assembled at the very end. And then we have the Spider-Man movie. So, okay.
Yeah, wow.
I love it so much. I want to be a part of these decisions, and I want you to be a part of these decisions. I want to be in that room being like, guys, this is what we got to do. 2025 is going to be awesome. This is just a reminder of how fun this podcast can be once we start having this kind of stuff to go through. I want to hear everybody's bold predictions. On our Discord channel, people have already been tossing out their bold predictions. I think it's fun. Let's hear them all. Shoot your shot. Hit us up. Let's hear where you're at. And maybe you'll be right, and it'll be fun to have a receipt on that. Thanks for listening. Please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. It really helps us. Let's grow together. Higher, further, faster, together. We'll see you next time on Friends from Work.